for the unpredictable future in advance. I introduce our moderator, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, Director of Business Performance, Commercial and Operation Strategy, Alliances and Transformation at Epsilon. Also, I request the fellow panelists to please join the stage. Mr. Puneet Tripathi, Head of Data Science at Wakefit, Mr. Naresh Khanduri, Vice President, Global Head of Generative AI for CX, Capgemini, Dr. Karthik Anantharaman, Vice President of International Sales Marketing, Apollo Hospitals Enterprises Limited, and Mr. Manu Cheko, Deputy Director of Center of Excellence at Myntra. Over to you, Ms. Mamata Banerjee.
Hello, everyone. I hope you've had your coffee and let's take ourselves to the next stage of the discussion in customer experience. Uh, we spoke about how do we in future orchestrate our CX, right? And what is it to look in the next decade to come? As part of this panel, we'll be talking more as next steps. How do we really bridge the gap between the strategy and operationalizing the strategy? Now, we all have to agree that with new technologies comes new challenges as well. The same customer is leaving his or her footprints over the board, and it is really difficult to ascertain how do we really pinpoint that this is the customer that we are trying to target, right? What are the systems and processes in place that a company should have to really take us to the next level of maturity as far as CX is concerned? So we are going to talk in this panel about how do we bring about all these changes, what are the things to watch out for, what are some of the policies and regulatory frameworks that should be in place to really hit the jackpot, right? With that, let me get started. Now, we all agree that there are unpredictable changes, as I was mentioning. Today, we have mobile, we have laptops, we have so many touch points, right? Who knows in the next 5 years what other touch points are here to come? So, I would like to ask you, Karthik, how can organizations really effectively anticipate and prepare for this unpredictable change in customer behavior and expectations? What are some of your thoughts?
Sure. I think we live in the era where technology is changing almost every minute, if not every second. And I think customer expectation is also possibly moving at the same pace. So again, since I am from the healthcare background, so I can tell you that in healthcare, while the expectation doesn't change every minute, but we see that in healthcare, expectations change in every generation of a patient or a consumer. Okay, that's how I will segment myself on this question. So broadly, we see that amongst our patient types, we have children, which is the early part of our spectrum of consumers. And in that, we basically have very little children, where the decision maker is the parent. Then we have the teens, where today, if you ask, the decision maker is actually the teen and the parent is a facilitator. And then we have the adult who's a self-decision maker. And then we have the geriatric population, which is basically the elderly, where typically the children facilitate. Sometimes the adults make their own decision, but sometimes the children make the decision as well. So these are the four sets of consumers that we are trying to address. And I've also stated who the decision makers are. The expectation that is being, the expectation change that we are seeing there is basically one on what is the experience that I can get if I go to this particular hospital and see this doctor, right? I need to be able to very objectively articulate that to that consumer, for which in the previous session, as I mentioned, we have very consciously made a decision to rate the quality of our services, which is shown online. So therefore, you get to see how a certain doctor has been rated, and you also get to see qualitative comments written by certain patients who've seen that doctor. Second, we have consciously made a decision to have, I would say, good quality data within our system. So naturally, for every patient that comes in, we are not just capturing patient demographics, but we are also capturing long-term outcomes and follow-up data of the patient, which, as mentioned by one of our colleagues in the previous panel, we anonymize and that we publish that every year, these are the number of patients we treated. Amongst these many number of patients we treated, we have had 1 year follow-up, 2 year follow-ups, 5 year follow-ups with these many patients. And this is the outcome that we have seen in those patients. Now, this outcome data is extremely important for a new patient that is looking for a similar solution or a similar treatment from a healthcare service provider. So these are some of the things that we have seen which helps. And I'll come now to the middle and the last part of the spectrum, which is the self-decision making adult and the children that are making decision for the geriatric or their parents. There, typically you see that there are broadly two types of medical conditions they come with. One is acute, which is an emergency, and two is chronic, where it can wait for a certain amount of time before you can actually get an appointment and then go seek medical attention. What we have made in acute is basically geotag and make sure that they reach the nearest facility. So therefore, we have tried to develop partnerships. If you see in certain hospitals, the ambulance will travel a long distance to pick up the patient and take the patient back to their own hospital. So there is so much time wasted. Rather, had there been a facility 5 minutes away, stabilize the patient there and then take to the main hospital. That's the point we are trying to do. So for us in our ecosystem, we have Apollo clinics which are available in the community. We have Spectra hospitals which are available in the community, and we also have B2B partnerships with other non-Apollo branded institutions where first emergency care can be provided, patient stabilize and then move. That's the acute care experience we are trying to get better. I wouldn't say we have reached a steady state yet, but a conscious effort has been made in that direction. Second, in chronic, the expectation is that what consumer loyalty that we typically see in FMCG has now come into healthcare also. So a patient expects that if I continue to come back to the same hospital, can I get better experiences, better discounts the next time? So we have captured that. Now on our app, they get credit points. We call them Apollo credit points. And they get to redeem the credit points the next time that they come back as well. So that literally translates into rupee value discounts for them the next time they order anything online. We do the same thing on consultation fees as well. And we also do the same thing that if the customer comes back for a second consultation back to us within 10 days, we do not charge a second consultation fee. So it's completely waived off. So these are certain things that we have actually brought in place to enhance customer experience across different subsets.
Thank you so much, Karthik. Thanks for giving those perspectives. So we all understand there's a lot of data around us, right? And we've grown in a generation, many of us, I would say, speaking for myself here, where we started off with Excel modeling, we moved into big data, then came analytics, now we are talking of Gen AI. So my next question to you, Puneet, is considering the richness of data that exists today, how does data analytics and predictive modeling play a part in anticipating what the future of CX is going to look like?
So it is very difficult to predict what future is going to look like. We try to anticipate what kind of trends are popping up, what people are talking about. Borrowing from what Dr. Karthik said, that there are these groups of segments of consumers where people are responding in a very different way to. Okay, thank you. People are responding in very different way to how their expectation from retailers and from e-tailers are. We are in consumption business wherein a person who is just passed out of college and is coming to a city and is ordering furniture or mattress for his house, his expectation is very different. His expectation in terms of aesthetic is the expectation in terms of what kind of mattress he wants is very different. What kind of aesthetic he wants from his sofa is very different from somebody who is my age and ordering for a house I might be setting up and moving in with my wife, having a first kid, second kid, third kid, people like those. So what we have tried to do is build something called VOC, Voice of Customer, a pipeline which was earlier AI based, but with advent of Gen AI and everything, we tried to integrate that as well. What we try to understand is what our customers are trying to tell us. What kind of expectation are they trying to say? What kind of issues they are trying to highlight? What kind of assistance they are trying to ask from us in terms of delivery, in terms of in terms of their communication, in terms of being updated with the statuses, in terms of movement of goods. Customers for most part are reasonable if they are updated in a reasonable, in a steady and in a prompt manner where they don't have to reach out to get updates. So what we try to do is we try to identify these are the pain areas that has been highlighted multiple times over last many weeks and months, and this can be something which my next customer might be really need a real update on. So we try to build that part of our customer experience pitch and the customer experience touch point, and we try to have the customer informed beforehand before we try to predict that these are the points where customer will call us. So we try to reach to them before that point arrives. And more often than not, all e-commerce companies have a tendency to delay somebody. We don't do that intentionally, but sometimes things go wrong. So we try to reach out to customer in person because apologies are better made in person. So we try to reach out them, call them, instead of just sending a SMS. We have also realized with the newer folks, and not just newer folks, it has become a trend for all people who are my age as well. And we are seeing that people are responding better on WhatsApp than instant messaging channels than a regular SMS or a phone SMS channel. So identifying those trend, identifying those mode of communication and reaching out to them on their preferred mode of communication is the key to having a long-term relationship with customer. Making sure, having that empathy with them that whenever we are delayed, apologizing, identifying those issues that are getting highlighted very frequently, trying to address them as an organization. Those are the key things. And this is where data analytics plays that role. Defining the right metrics, measuring, having the pipeline to calculate that, and then measuring them on a regular basis, weekly, monthly, and seeing improvement, taking initiative to bring them to the right level. I think that is what we do, and that's how I see it.
Perfect. Thank you. Uh, Now, in the growing era of changing demands, right, and especially so for a services organization, in the plethora of things that we see when you're in a service firm, not only has our client become more demanding, but so has the customers of the clients, right? There's a rapidly changing demand cycle. You have to fulfill that. So, my next question to you, Naresh, is how do you see companies being able to balance the agility side of the game and still focus on the stability side of the game in their CX strategies?
So it's a good and a tricky question, yeah. So who asks for this agility? We always say our customers are asking for. So all the Wakefit customers, it might be all of us. And then he is the one who is implementing it. And then he is asking that agility from Myntra, who is also buying mattresses from Wakefit. So it's a very cyclic thing which we call as agility. I mean, we as a human race have become wanting to go so fast that it kind of fuels. But coming to your question, how do we balance it? See, being a consulting organization, yeah, that's true. Clients put a pressure saying, I have got all this data, I have huge data lakes, now I have knowledge base, now you have all these LLMs, go to ChatGPT, it can answer everything in the world, even trying to control behavior of my wife, which is very difficult. So the hallucinations became part of us, right? I mean, you go into CXO meetings, you yourself will wonder, really, can GenAI or the AI and data do this? I was not aware of it in spite of spending so much of time in it. But the best way I have felt is, the consulting world always had kind of an answer to put that balance in place. And if you get time, and if you guys are not familiar with, try to read on to that. So there is a good diagram that we try to make on saying, where is the desirability, viability, and feasibility? If you try plotting that and put it all together, assume these are three circles and a Venn diagram that you make. If you get the good intersection, then you should look for that solution. And that is what you should go for implementation. Because in a given day, you will get 10,000 ideas. If we go around the room saying how much more Myntra should do on their site or what should Wakefit do, everybody would have one unique idea. All of us will have. I mean, which is a very natural thing, right? We as a consumer are giving. And he'll go crazy on saying, guys, what do you think we are? I mean, we can only do up to that much. So point I'm trying to say is, if you go into this process of desirability, viability, and feasibility, you'll find your answers. And those are the request or demand that we should take as a business, and that will give us stability. So take an example, right? I mean, we were working with one of the very large organization, where the whole attempt was that we should be preempting all the customer fallouts. And data and AI has a typical, algorithms built around it. You can have data that can support it. It can churn a lot of stuff. And after the new genesis of Gen AI, it would give a contextual answer to the contact center person so that the dropout doesn't happen. Yeah. We put that in place. So this is the desire of the client that my dropout rate should drastically reduce. Let's say starting with 10%. I'll not give you exact number, but 10%, 15%, and so on and so forth. So it should continuously reduce. Yeah. So this is desirability. We went into and said, oh, okay, is such a solution, first of all, even viable? Can you really make it happen? By technology, yeah, up to a good extent, you can make it happen. You have the data, up to a good extent you have data. We can put an analytics engine on top of it, then we can plug it with a knowledge base into the LLM. So we put it together with your contact center. Yeah, fairly you will have the prediction and the solution and the answer and the proactive calling of the customer saying it looks like this will lead to a churn, right? Call this customer. Now, their customer service reps otherwise could also do, but now engines are doing it. Engine is proactively reaching out. The cost, which is the feasible part of it, was higher than what a human could do at that point in time. Because all of you know, right? I mean, moment we say, I'll use Azure OpenAI, then you'll say, okay, how many tokens are you firing? Then you'll calculate these many tokens will cost you so much. And for every token that you are paying, what is the overall cost that you're going to incur of that infra for which you are trying to preempt? So in short, what I'm trying to say is now put it back into the diagram if you are a pure consulting, and I know many of us see consulting as a different way, but that solves the problem, right? It gives you a perspective as a business that yes, you have a desire, which is very good. Yes, this technology is available, so there is a viability of doing such a thing. But at this point in time, it's not really a feasible solution to deploy because it's not financially feasible. So don't put a technical challenge to a tech guy saying, can you solve it? Oh, I can solve it, but it's going to probably cost you far more. So now if you start, I'll not give you a whole preaching on the model itself. There are enough papers which are published on it. But I do find it very useful to make that balancing act, go back to the business saying, it's not giving me the value that you are going to look for. Maybe 6 months from now, 10 months from now, as technology becomes cheaper. Now, as you do that, you need 3 places where you should apply that. First, you should apply it to your business, because that is where all the demand originates of a change, of agility, right? The second part is applied to your tech stack, whatever framework that you are doing. Is that framework good enough to do it? Can your technology stack take care of all these 3 again? Because tech people also have a lot of aspiration. Huh? I mean, not that business asks. We give them over-engineered solutions at point in time. Because new technology, I also have to learn. So let me put Gen AI into it, required or not, because otherwise we will apply it. So, I mean, apply the same 3 principles there. You'll say, oh, I'll do that, but it's not going to give me the benefit that I'm going to look for. And then look for the execution and the process part of it. Because most of the time what we ignore is business says, yes, we have. Technology says, yes, we have. But then there is an execution team who is supposed to really execute it, make it happen for you, roll it out for your customer, finally lead to your contact center or call center or even the frontline staff or the sales staff. Then look at that part of the process. Is it feasible there? Does it require all my guys to change all their devices? I mean, it's not feasible again. I mean, yeah, tech guys are saying I'll make the feature, but it can't render it on the devices that I have right now, right? If you see, Google is going to have the small LM on the newer versions of the Android that they will ship. But would you change all the Android devices of all your sales guys tomorrow morning? Answer is no. It's not a feasible thing to do for a business as of now. So as I said, I mean, look at it to doing a desirability, feasibility, and viability matrix. Put it on to business technology and the execution, and you'll find the stability between agility and remaining sane within organization.
DVF is my new mantra now. Thank you so much for that. Now we've all heard of the 27 hamburger emoticon story and the fiasco that happened, right? With the emoticon not showing where exactly the cheese should be in the hamburger. Now, there are various times when we are collecting a lot of data, but we don't really close the loop on it, right? We are giving so many touch points to the customers. However, we don't have a system and process in place to be able to close the loop. So, my next question to you, Manu, is in your experience, what are some of these best practices that companies could overtake to integrate good feedback loops, really close the loop and build it into their operational processes for a continuous improvement?
I'll speak about what we do at Myntra, right? Uh, First of all, it is important to understand which are the channels through which customers trying to talk to you, right? Today, there are various channels beyond what your system provides. So social media is one of the channels. Customer can write feedback on App Store or on Google Play Store as well, and that's a feedback. Customers are talking to us on calls, chat, emails, etc. So first is about identifying all the channels through which customers trying to talk to you. I think the second part of it is, do you have an instrumentation to curate this VOCs that various customers are telling you different things? It could be a positive mention, it could be a negative mention. But do you have an instrumentation to curate this customer feedback? Right? That's the second most important part of it. The third part of it is, once you curate, once you identify the top customer pain points or top customer expectations that are ever changing, what are you doing towards solving for that? Like say, for example, when we look at a certain data set, we see customer asking for faster delivery is one of the biggest asks. Probably the Zeptos and the Blinkits of the world has changed customer expectation drastically. And as an organization, what are we doing towards that expectation? Or do we want to just stay back in terms of saying my SLA is 5 days or 10 days? Or do we want to bring in solutions that through which I can deliver that faster to the customer? And many such feedbacks are coming in from the customer, wherein you understand the changing expectation of the customer, and you also understand different pain points the customer is going through, while shopping with you, or post-sale experiences, and so on and so forth. So it is about what actions are you putting in place, right? After you identify your top pain areas and your top customer expectations, and after you put in certain actions towards it, it's about evaluating what is the impact. Now that could be through certain matrices that you have defined, which translates or through which you are able to identify. But it is important to go back and reevaluate the logic that you put behind evaluating those matrices, because over time what happens with matrices is that it gets managed. But it is very important to go back and listen to the VOC of the customer. What is the customer trying to say? Is your metric still relevant? Is your logic to your metric still relevant? So these are a couple of areas to be clearly focused on, and then that going back into business and that translating into changes in the way we operate and trying to meet customer expectation, reduce customer pain. I think that's the way we do it at Myntra.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights. Moving on from a customer feedback loop, now we all understand variety of emerging trends and technologies all around us, right? And going by the newly learned DVF mantra that I picked up, thanks to you, Naresh. I would like to ask you, Karthik, what in the industry that you are in, and basis your past experience, what are some of the emerging trends and technologies which are befitting for this particular industry, or in case if you're aware of other industries, that we should look at integrating into our CX operations, and which will also make us stay competitive in the near future?
Sure. Very pertinent. I'll talk about the first solution that we have recently deployed. It's called patient-reported outcomes. So what is patient-reported outcomes? So the patient comes, sees the doctor in the hospital or the clinic, and the patient leaves and goes. So do we know as a healthcare institution what happens to that patient after the patient has left our facility? Because we have given a certain advice that, okay, take this medicine, please take it for 3 months. After 3 months, please repeat these investigations and come back to us for a follow-up. This is a typical advice the doctor has given. But does it really happen? The answer is, in the traditional world that we lived in, it seldom happens. Very few people actually keep track of when is the next appointment with my doctor. And this is so true, especially with countries like us where we have a large number of patients with diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, which are all chronic disorders which need a very constant touch point with the treating doctor. So what we have introduced on our app is something called the patient-reported outcomes feature. So in a patient-reported outcomes feature, after the patient has left the hospital or the clinic, when the patient goes back home, many things can happen. The patient could possibly see a new side effect, which was not previously known. A patient could possibly see a new positive effect of the medication or the treatment that's been provided. So there is an option now for the patient to record it formally, which sends a notification to the healthcare system and the treating doctor, that the doctor knows what's going on with the patient. Second, we're now trying to build an auto notification through a CRM tool and then pass it on to what we now call as the patient counselor team, to say that now start tracking when is it time for the patient's next follow-up visit, and make sure that you just give them a courtesy call. And in that courtesy call, it's not a sales conversation that can I book your next appointment. It's about how are you doing, right? So when you ask how are you doing, how is your family, is everyone okay? And by the way, you came to us and this is the doctor that treated, this was the advice given, would it be fine for us to look at the next appointment? So I think the way how you see it and to achieve the same end objective is also something we are consciously training our teams to do, which is the second part. And the third part is to increasingly understand the patient persona. And in that, we have our own way of segmenting, even within our hospital services, like hotels. So like, for example, the Taj has various categories of hotels, right? So starting from Ginger up to Vivanta and all that. So similarly, we know that if a patient has gone to a specific type of our healthcare institution, we also have customer segmentation basis that some of our hospitals are premium, some of our hospitals are in the mid category, some of our hospitals are in the entry category. So accordingly, we are able to look at persona and then give them specific information about what next to do. For example, a diabetic patient has come, and every 3 months or 6 months, can we arrange a complimentary nutritionist or a dietitian consultation for you? Can we look at monitoring your physical activity and see how you are right now? So these are additional experiences that we are either doing free of cost for enhanced experience, or we are doing at subsidized prices as applicable. So these are some of the things we have tried to develop within the app ecosystem or the tech ecosystem that we have to enhance that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we have various frameworks, we have created the operational feedback loops, we have done a lot of things. Now every year, I'm sure all of you sitting in this room see there are hundreds of programs that are created, right? And we all go on to create a program objective, set up a project team. And these are mostly, I'm talking of internal facing. But in many cases, we probably even set up KPIs, but teams work in silos within a large organization, and we've seen that the ROI and effectiveness of those programs is something amiss amongst many such environments, many such companies, and I think it's a problem statement that exists in all our companies, right? So my next question to you, Puneet, is how can companies measure the ROI and effectiveness for the operationalized CX initiatives that they've taken up? How do you keep up measuring the ROIs effectively and make sure that we are getting the benefits of what we have really gone on to institutionalize?
So, I think the framework to do that will be first to identify the metric that is going to define the problem better. For example, for certain thing, CSAT could be a great metric. For other things, NPS could be a great metric. But for certain operationalized CX initiative, your repeat rate could be a good metric. For example, if a customer is happy with the purchase, if a customer is happy with the delivery, if the customer is happy with the post-purchase experience, there's a fair chance that they will come and repeat and purchase again. So first and foremost job is to identify that metric. Then second is to define that metric very clearly. That how do you calculate what you're going to measure. Third is once you have done that, you have to start looking at it, start measuring that on a very frequent interval. Though that frequency could be daily, that frequency could be weekly, frequency could be monthly, but it has to be religiously measured and monitored. Fourth is dissemination of that information to the people who that metric is relevant for. For example, let's take OTIF as an example, on time in full, which is a very good metric for I think all the e-commerce organizations, or in general manufacturing or any of the commerce organization. So on time in full is going to be delivered, but it starts from top. Like my company's OTIF is this, that my company's OTIF is let's say 90%, let's say 95%, but then I'm missing 10%. Where what is it that is contributing to that 10%? Let's go to one step below. What is the contribution from my operations team? What is the contribution from my logistics team? What is the contribution from my warehouse team? What is the contribution from my supply chain team? Is my communication to the customer effective or not? See, we always keep talking about customer experience, customer centers. They are the first line of defense when things have gone wrong. They're not responsible for anything that has gone wrong. They just take the heat, make sure that they have all the answers. But anything that has gone wrong in operation, has gone wrong in manufacturing, has gone wrong in procurement, has gone wrong with tech. But most likely nothing wrong there. They're the one who's taking that heat for everybody. So equipping them with the right set of information available at their fingertip at the right time will drive that ROI. That is the fifth point. With fourth point, that making sure that is the right dissemination of information. And then fifth is, once you have this framework, always make sure that you're carving out objectives and defining their respective key results to measure, and following that on a weekly or a monthly basis with somebody at the leadership looking at it and owning that objective and driving it, making sure that there are initiative which is getting carved out to impact every metric. And then you can say that KPI is improving or not. The ideal way for me to look at any of this is, I would want to do something which is way too less in effort and can produce maximum amount of ROI for me and for the organization. So idea should always be, what is the one thing that I can do in this month, in this quarter, or whatever time frame that is going to have the highest impact on either my delivery rate or either my OTIF or my warehouse fill rate, which are going to improve the top level, the North Star metric for me. So though that North Star metric, let's say, is still OTIF, but maybe my warehouse fill rate will define that. So identifying metric at each of the levels and then having a tracking system and then measuring them every month, every week, and then taking initiative to move that from point 1 to point B.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Puneet. My next question is for you, Manu. We were speaking about program objectives, 100 of program being run in the same company, working in silos, etc. How do we align internal departments, and what strategies organizations can form to deliver a seamless and consistent customer experience across the board? And we have seen this in many companies, and I can speak from my experience in consulting, in services organizations, that you don't have a single face to the customer, but a variety of departments are talking their own way. So what are some of the things that in your experience companies should do so that they have a seamless experience when it comes to customers?
So I think it all starts with driving a culture of customer centricity within the larger org, right? And it is not just the responsibility of the customer experience team or the contact center team to drive experience. It is the larger org. So how is that we embed customer centricity into the company values, and how is that we drive it across? I think it starts from there. Secondly, it is about having customer experience goals, having clear objectives set, having key result areas set, and this not just being set for the customer experience team, but for the larger org again. Let's say, for example, customer experience comes at a cost. So there are business finance teams who has to sponsor that cost. If the business finance team goal is only to optimize cost and to reduce losses, the kind of collaboration between the customer experience and business finance would be as minimal, because they will try to cut down as much, while to improve that experience there is some level of investment needed. Right? So it has to go into the goals of the larger org and not just the customer experience teams. I think the third most important thing in ensuring is breaking down silos, like you mentioned earlier. There are various teams led by different leaders, and they have different objectives, and they work in their own space, right? And there will be a lot of duplications, a lot of overlaps that you will see, conflicts that you will see between teams. That does not help the org reach that larger objective or goal. So how is that? How is that we bring in collaboration between teams? Every team has clear objectives set, clear deliverables set. How is that teams work with each other to help each other achieve their larger goal? I think that plays a bigger role. Another thing that, another I think key thing is training. Training plays a very critical role. Many a times we speak very little about it, right? Training is one element that brings people together, sets clear agenda, sets a clear objective in everybody's mind, and I think that plays a very critical role. And training the ground staff, right? It could be the folks facing the customers on ground, could be the sales staff, or it could be the folks in the contact center world, right? Helping them understand, bringing them together, driving the culture of customer centricity in them, helping them understand why it is important, empowering them, I think plays a critical role. I think another key aspect would be standardizing the processes, and that should be with empowerment. So if you have a standard SOP to be followed, but in a real-time scenario when the agent is interacting with the customer, he realizes this is an instance beyond the policy, but policy says, let's say, let me decline this claim of the customer, but I'm listening to more information that's beyond policy, and let me take a subjective call for the customer here. So that kind of an empowerment for the agent, that combination is what will bring in that change. So these are a couple of key aspects that needs to be put together to ensure that, teams are working together and we are able to achieve the larger success.
Thank you so much. Very pertinent points. Coming to almost the last of our questions, and I'll open up, open it up to the floor. I wanted to take one last question with you, Naresh. And we all are hearing about cookie deprecation. It's hitting our doors. We have so many regulatory frameworks which are different across not only companies but across countries, right? As far as data privacy goes, etc., etc. Now, how do you believe these regulatory changes and compliance requirements are going to impact the operationalization of the impact that customer experience projects that we are trying to implement?
Yeah, so it's a really good question when we say we want brilliant customer experience. And at the same time, if you see who wants it and who do we want to deliver it to, I'll still go back to our own example. I want a very good experience, so I am that customer. I want it from a company. And then the company says, okay, give me that data. And then we're like, okay, no, that I can't give because I worry about my data. And then I sit on the other side where I say, I will deliver best experience to you. I'm going to collect some of that data. So it's a very tricky thing for organizations to play. I also feel governments do with the best intention and best interest. If you see India's data privacy policy, except for, and I thought we did fairly well from a maturity perspective where we are as a country, except for you cannot convict a person under criminal offense. Rest all, you can take anybody to court. But now if you flip it on the business side of it, how many of the CXOs get a report of saying, here is your PII encryption report on a daily basis? Everybody is very interested how many new clients you got, how many customer queries came, how many really ordered, how many entered into my site, how many registered, why is conversion not happening? But nobody asks about how much of this is encrypted, how much of this you cannot read, how much of this is actually kept in PI compliant database. So governments have to get in, because think about it, right? I mean, hospitals have so much of patient data. What are they doing with it? You won't know. So government has to do certain things about it. I don't know how many of you are following it, but in EU, they had a proposal, not the data, but the AI Act, not the GDPR or CPA. Now they are putting an AI Act, and most probably by May or June, Act is Act, but it will become a law, right? So I do feel the intentions are very clear, saying, I want to protect my citizen, I want to protect the people. But now, people are us only, and we want that personalized service. So the tech company is struggling with saying, how do I deliver all this? In my view, the answer is somewhere, halfway through. Do you have a real consent from your user? To what extent? So those systems, although there are partially those systems, when you go to a browser, it says we do have cookies. Do you allow only few cookies? But nobody really tells you few cookies means which cookies. And I don't know how many times you read it, what does that cookie mean? And when you say allow all cookies, what does that mean? Meaning you will now share it with anybody and start calling me tomorrow morning? Does that it means? Or it means I will remember you so that next time you come to the app or the browser, I'll continue your session, although you never registered with me. Although it's very convenient, right? I went up to a point, I was looking for a diagnosis or the help from a medical channel, and it remembered I filled up to here without sharing a lot, and could continue my journey. It is a great example. But those three categorization does not tell me anything in detail. What do you mean by that detailing? So I do think those will come into play. Where tech will start playing a lot more role is, rather than going identifiable information, which we are right now onto a cohort type of information, you'll go into a more granular than cohort. So what is the size of a cohort? Is it 10,000, 5,000, 2,000, 200? How much is the cohort size? So that I can still reasonably personalize and deliver an experience, and then still can meet up, right? But from an organization perspective, I think every organization CXO will have to start looking, while I'm looking at my business KPIs, where is my customer KPI? Am I keeping their data safe or not? And if not, then I have to tell my tech team saying, please do that, because then government is going to run after me with all those regulations. Yeah?
Perfect. Those are some of the guardrails that are required, and we have to work around them. So, quickly wrapping up, I guess what we heard was people, process, technology. The framework never fails. We have to make sure that cross teams are working efficiently. We have processes in place which ensure that we are really giving a balance. We are taking a balanced approach as far as customer experience goes, and then there's the huge tech part, which is responsible tech. So I'll quickly go around the panel, give 10 seconds each to probably cull out a phrase on what do you believe is the true way forward as far as operationalizing of CX is concerned. Maybe in a very short phrase, and then we can take maybe one question or two questions, or we don't have time for that.
Encourage the Q&A networking.
Okay, perfect. So let's go for the wrap up.
It starts with understanding customer emotions and empathy.
Thank you.
So for me, one statement would be alignment to a common cause, and that's customer experience.
I'll just say responsible customer handling.
Perfect.
I think measuring how we add value to customer will be the key.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, it's a wrap. You've been a wonderful audience hearing. All of us are there. All these gentlemen are there. Please feel free to reach out to them and ask your questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot to all the panel members for sharing your thoughts on operationalizing your CX, preparing for the unpredictable future in advance. Now I request Dr. Karthik Anantharaman to please come forward and felicitate all the panelists and moderator.